1 Corinthians 11, and we're going to start with verse 7. And it says, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for inasmuch as he is the image of the glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man." Let me ask you something, all you cowboys in here. Where do you think the idea that if you come into a house or into a church, this is where it started, in the church. If you come into a house or a church, that you're supposed to take your hat off?
My grandma told me if I did, she's gonna whoop me. She's about 4 foot.
So your grandma taught you.
Grandma was a big man, and she said that if Clyde ain't doing it, you're not doing it.
And that's pretty much how everything. That's kind of like the joke I told the other day about the pot roast, that you had to cut the end of it off because it didn't fit the pot. This is where that idea came from. The idea that if a man wears a cap, he's covering his head. And it says here, do not cover the head.
You could have just left that part out.
But here's the deal. I remember as a young man asking one of my elders, because we wore baseball caps and we came to church. I just looked at her and I thought, why not? That's what we do.
That's what I heard all my life. Right?
Okay, I mean, that's fine.
I was always told it's disrespectful to have a hat on the house, and in the military, if you walk in the house with the cap on, you're gonna get smacked.
Have you ever, has anyone ever told you other than maybe that's the reason it's disrespectful? I'm just having a hard time understanding why this is something that is spiritual, that we have transferred into the natural. Okay? You hear what I'm saying? It is something that a person that does not understand the spirit world, or is not a spiritual person, has taken. Have you ever heard this before? That if a woman cuts her hair, she's sinning? You have, yeah. Have you ever heard before that if a man grows his hair long, that it's shameful?
I heard that one too. Yeah.
It's right here. It's right here. But you see, what Paul was doing here in 1 Corinthians 10 and 11, he was contrasting the difference between a spiritual man and an unspiritual man. And we took it as doctrine. Okay? But this is one. Let me go and read another. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. You got that right?
I heard that part, but I don't understand why.
Well, it's because woman was created out of the side of man.
Right.
Now let me ask you, why didn't God just create woman out of the dirt like he did the man?
There had to be a connection.
There had to be a connection.
Yes, sir.
I know he took her out of the rib so that she's equal to him. She's not.
But the
above
woman's
him.
part of the man. Coming out of the man.
Okay, I like that. I mean, that's as good as I've heard.
In the sense of the Lord's eyes, I think, I
Yeah.
don't know.
But I would say this, that he created mankind. He created mankind male and female. But for them to be, if he created the female out of the dirt like he created the male, then they would be the same in the spirit. So why did he, now listen to me, he didn't say one has authority, more authority than the other one. He just says they're different. And why was that? Because in the world and in the spirit world and in any situation, there has to be order. So he created man out of the dirt. He created woman out of the man's side. So the order was set that man was the head, and that woman was equal in authority, but under a different order. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
So he created, so woman was created out of man, is what that's saying. Verse number 9. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. In other words, man was created out of the dirt, not out of the woman. Oops. That's the original man. Are you hearing me? Verse number 10. Now this is the one, this is the verse that I look at, and somebody in here might have an answer. Verse number 10. For this cause, what cause? That man was created out of woman was created out of man, and man was created out of woman. So you can't have one without the other, basically. But verse 10 says, for this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. What's any of that got to do with the angels? Hello? It's sure quiet in here. Where's all my help?
Well, I don't know about the angels, but in that verse, like,
Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. The next verse says, nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. But what's the angels got to do with it? I'm looking at it saying, okay, here's my hunch. Here's my hunch. Do you remember that the angels said, who is man that God should be paying attention to him? Lucifer was saying, who is man that God is placing him above us? So the angels, now listen, the angels knew that God created man out of the dirt. The angels knew that God created woman out of the man. The angels understood that man had authority. Okay? But they had to also understand that the authority that man had, that was given to them by God, was given to the woman because she was out of the man. The angels had to understand that the authority that man had was transferred to the woman.
Okay, I agree with that 100%.
So what you're saying is, would that be equal authority or not?
That would be
Yes,
equal,
right.
it would be equal authority,
Right.
but it wouldn't be the spiritual order.
Okay. That's-
Are you hearing me? So there was man, woman out of man. God says man first, woman second, in the order of life, but not in the authority of the Spirit. Are we together on this anywhere? Have I lost everybody here? So, so what did we get hung up on? We got hung up on hair. You can't have long hair, and if you got long hair, and it has nothing to do with hair. Now, verse 10. I want you to read this with me. For this cause ought the woman to have power over her head because of the angels. There's a weird word sitting right in the middle of that. What do you think the word ought means? Should. So he's not making a statement. He's asking a question. The whole first part of 1 Corinthians 11, he's not making a statement about hair and about headship. He's not making a statement. He's asking a question. Is this what you believe? And we turned it into a whole long hair and dresses up to here, and we turned it into all kinds of stuff except what he was.
Is the way instead making a problem?
We turned it into all kinds of stuff that it didn't have anything to do with, because why? Because man wanted to do that. Okay, I'm gonna get out. I'm in too deep. I'm in too deep now to get out. Now look. Now go down to 14 with me. Y'all gonna love this. Doeth not even. Does that sound like a question? Yes. Doeth not even nature itself teach you that if a man hath long hair, it is a shame to him? Now let me ask you something. Which tree told you that?
My dad said that long hair.
From nowhere. There was nobody cooking there. That's the only time I had long hair. I came home and
And I love this. He's saying, what nature? First of all, again, nature. I think he meant the natural man, but he said nature itself. Well, I don't know about. I've never had a tree talk to me. All right, I never had the moon talk to me. You hear what I'm saying? So somewhere in the middle, nature shows up. He says, this is a shame. Then he goes on and he says, but if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. Do you realize that the covering that he's talking about is not her hair? It's God.
Well, what's the long part of it got to do with it?
What's hair got to do with it?
But it says her long hair. Well, what's that got to do? How does that long hair, how does that fit into it?
That's so the angels will see a long-haired thing and think it's a woman.
So they can compare the man and the woman.
That's right.
So they can compare the man who has short hair, that should be out there, the man
Like
has
the
short
back, so
hair,
you see
and
something
the
like
woman
that.
has long
Yeah,
hair.
that's it.
But that being said, we have the image of God having long hair. Answer to that. I mean, I don't need to put you on the spot, but, you know, just the image. You know, we have the image of the Lord having long hair.
Well, you know what? We see Jesus. We see pictures of Jesus with long hair and blue eyes and light skin.
So there's no shame in that.
No shame in
Well,
that.
even
And let me.
I can-
So, I mean, I didn't mean to.
No, you're right on. You look at in 1 Corinthians 10, he's talking about meat that is offered as a sacrifice to idols. Okay? Now, what happened was once the meat was offered to the idols, it would go on sale. It would go on sale and it'd be cheap. Good meat, but cheap. And in verse 10 it says, in chapter 10, I think it's verse about 8 or 9, it says this. It says, well, what does it matter if it was offered to sacrifice? The sacrifices, they don't mean anything. It even goes so far as and says this. Well, if a non-Jewish Israelite buys this cheap meat, do you think it matters to him that it was offered to the idols? No, it was cheap.
He's hungry.
And so Jesus was saying, all of these wonderful religious things that we're doing, or Paul was, all these wonderful religious things that we've been doing, they were just religious. But after Jesus came, all those sacrifices, they don't mean anything anyway.
If everything changed.
It didn't matter. But then it goes on and he says this, but if someone says to you that don't eat that because that was offered to the idols or as a sacrifice, he says don't eat that. Paul said this, for his conscience don't eat it. But it don't mean anything to you. Because you know that Jesus has come and all those sacrifices don't mean anything anyway. Are you hearing me? So all of this stuff, when we talk about hair and we talk about, and it has nothing to do with being the head. You know what the word head means? It means origination. It means source. You see, man God was the source of man. He created man. But man was the origination or the source of the woman because she was created out of man. It has nothing to do with authority. It has everything to do with order. Have I confused everybody in here?
No, yes, no, yes, but why is her hair?
But what's so cool about it to me is verse 16.
Oh,
All of that stuff we just said. What's he say in verse 16? But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. So he just went through all of that, and he was saying this, and the long hair, and no hair, and bald-headed, and be the head of this and head of that. He says none of that. We don't have any of that in the Church of Christ, because the head of mankind is God. So he just went through all that to let us know that he was just, I said last week, and I'll probably close it with this, he was just pointing out the difference that religion has made and the rules that we make, and they don't have any spiritual connection. They're just what we do. Now, I'm going to give you one thing